Welcome back. Now, former Zambian President Rupiah Banda has died at the age of 85. He had colon cancer. Banda was the fourth president of Zambia and led the country from 2008 to 2011. During his presidency, he worked to strengthen the economy, healthcare and education. To speak more about Banda's legacy, I'm joined by Zambian historian Dr. Sishuwa Sishuwa, and he joins us now live from Lusaka. Dr. Sishuwa, thank you very much for your time here on eNCA. Now, firstly, tell me about his legacy after taking over back in 2008 when the former president, his predecessor, passed away of a stroke.
So his legacy is a mixed bag. You have to give him credit for how he handled the aftermath of the death of President Levi Mwanawasa in 2008, because this was the first time that Zambia was losing a head of state, a sitting head of state. And he presided over that tragic event very well, going on to have a by-election in which he was elected, having served as President Mwanawasa's vice president since 2006 until 2008 when Mwanawasa died. And over the next 3 years, he presided over impressive economic growth, partly left by Mwanawasa, but he was part of that team. And you have to give him credit also for how he conceded defeat after he lost the elections to an opposition candidate, Michael Sata, in Zambia's 2011 general election. Again, this was a legacy that Kenneth Kaunda, the founding president, had established in 1991, and Banda built on that by gracefully conceding defeat, something which should not be taken for granted, because in Africa, we have so many examples of leaders losing elections and hanging on to power. But that wasn't all about Rupiah Banda. Last year when Zambia held another general election, which was very, very closely contested, Banda, especially after Kaunda died in June 2021, stepped up to become the statesman that Kaunda was. In fact, he stepped in Kaunda's shoes. He encouraged the nation to have a peaceful election. He emphasized the importance of national unity. And ahead of the election, he said that the winners and the losers should coexist. If the incumbent lost, he should gracefully concede. And indeed, when the incumbent lost the election, when he tried to hang on to power, it was Banda who stepped up to encourage then-President Edgar Lungu to peacefully concede. So this is a man Zambia has lost, and that I think will be his legacy in many years to come. I must say very quickly that even though many people know Rupiah Banda as the president of Zambia, even before he was president, he had an illustrious political career starting in 1965 when he was appointed as Zambia's ambassador to Washington, before he went on to serve as Zambia's permanent representative to the United Nations, and then the country's Minister of Foreign Affairs. We often talk about Kaunda and we give him credit for Zambia's role in international affairs in the 70s and 80s, for example, and even the 60s. What we forget was that he had a formidable team around him, including Rupiah Banda, who actually made Kaunda's foreign policy to be a success that it was celebrated to be, including in the liberation of Southern Africa at the time.
I want us to go back a little bit to the point that you made that his legacy is a bit mixed. I'm assuming that you're talking about his detractors who would say that he dismantled what former President Mwanawasa was actually trying to build in terms of anti-corruption. He had been stripped of immunity by the Zambian government to be able to, face prosecution for alleged corruption amounting to $11 million, etc. But of course, he never went to jail for that. So it's not fair to still put that on his name. But of course, it is still a dark cloud.
It is. And I think that is one of his main weaknesses. His predecessor, Levi Mwanawasa, had cultivated a very good name as an anti-corruption campaigner. So it was expected that Banda would continue on that path. But after he assumed power in 2008, what we saw was Banda roaring back the fight against corruption. He abolished the anti-corruption law, which was very significant to Manawasa's success in the fight against corruption. He was also widely seen as having interfered in the corruption case involving former President Frederick Chiluba, who was controversially acquitted after Banda took over power. Critics suggested that Banda had interfered to make sure that Chiluba was left off the hook. And after he left office himself, his successor, Michael Sata, took him to office, took him to court on corruption charges. It was only after Sata died and Sata's successor, Edgar Lungu, took over power that Banda himself was acquitted under very controversial circumstances, similar to those that we witnessed when Chiluba was acquitted. In a sense, actually, Banda is compared to Edgar Lungu in relation to the fight against corruption. Both had a lackluster attitude towards the corruption, and Banda's children themselves were involved in corruption. One of them was convicted for corruption when his father was president. So when it comes to fight against corruption, Rupiah Banda did a terrible job.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Sishuwa, for your time here on NewsLink and on eNCA. Of course, Dr. Sishuwa Sishuwa, a Zambian historian, talking to us about the President Banda, former president of Zambia, who passed away yesterday. Now, the